What's going on, folks? Your boy again, Dr. Sean Thomas, back in the building with the Be More Today show. We are back. We are back. We are back in the building, folks. And again, thank you so much for your love and support. The Be More Today show is continuing to be here now in our fifth season. We continue to put great content out there for those who want to be more in their everyday lives. The show is now heard in 82 countries, over 60,000 downloads. Again, thanks for your love and support. This show continues to be out there to get you to be more today. And as always, if you want more information, see us online, bemoretoday.com, or on Instagram, Be More Today PT, Be More Today Show. And I'm your boy, Dr. Sean Thomas, on all major platforms. Our quote for today is simple as always. One can choose to go back towards safety or forward towards growth. Growth must be chosen again and again. Fear must be overcome again and again, by Abraham Maslow. This has been a year for me, folks, where I wanted to do a lot of different things, and they're happening. I wanted to run London, and London is done. London. Got that thing done, my second fastest marathon time. Super excited about it. And I'm going towards other things I'm trying to do. My second book, which is Project More, coming out sometime this fall, and a number of other things that I'm just trying to do because we all know life is short. But one of the things that we know that sometimes gets in the way of our growth is that we get complacent. There's no vision. There's no path for us to see where we can be, what we can do. And I just want to encourage you today to go out there and to keep pushing forward, to go forward one step at a time, to keep growing again and again, and to overcome the fears that may get in the way, that may hold you back from the greatest version that you can really be. And I thought to myself this week, who's someone that has inspired me to go out there and do things that I haven't done? Who's a visionary that I could bring on the show this week to inspire you guys just to be more and to see the greater picture that you can have in your lives? And who other than a returning member to the Be More Today show, Mitchell Silver. Now, Mitchell Silver has done so many things. He was on one of our first shows in season 2 of the Be More Today show, episode 82. And he shared with us so many things when he was actually here in New York. But he is now a principal with McAdams, a land planning and design company. He's responsible for providing advisory services in urban planning, parks, and public space planning. He's an award-winning planner with more than 39 years of experience and is internationally recognized for his leadership and contributions to contemporary planning issues. He is a prolific public speaker and specializes in urban planning, placemaking, and implementation strategies. Before joining McAdams, Mitchell served as a commissioner for New York City Department of Parks and Recreation, chief planning officer in Raleigh, North Carolina, and served as president of the American Planning Association and the American Institute of Certified Planners. Mitchell is one of the nation's most celebrated urban thinkers. He was selected to Plantin
Planetizen.
Planetizen's
Planetizen.
list of the 100 most influential urbanists in the world, folks, in the world. In addition, he has been honored as one of the top 100 city innovators in the world by UBM Future Cities, and the Urban Times named him one of the top international thought leaders of the built environment. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, pets included, please welcome back to the Be More Today show, my friend, my running buddy, and New York City's finest, even though he's in Raleigh, North Carolina now, but he's still in NYC's finest, Mitchell Silver. Mitchell, what is going on? Welcome back.
Well, thank you. And just that you know, New York City's my hometown. The first year I left, I was there once a month. Now I'm there every other month. I promised to run with you, Sean, and I'm going to keep my promise next time I'm back. So you all know I'm on the board of New York Roadrunners, so I still have that connection. Very active. My daughter lives there. My family lives there. So, but I'm doing good. I'm enjoying Uh, almost retirement. Looks like next year, June, I'll be semi-retiring. But love my New York and it's in my heart. And I wake up thinking about New York every single morning.
That's very exciting. And listen, I've been following your journey for the last couple of years now, and I just love seeing you do new things. I love seeing you open up new doors. And every time I check your social media, you're doing something different. And I had to have you on the show because I know that you're still running, and I know I missed you at one of the New York races that we had together. But I know that you're doing two marathons this year because you, like I, am on this road towards our Avid Six journey. So, what marathons are you doing this year, and what continues to inspire you, sir, to keep pushing towards the Avid Six?
Well, for one, I was going to give up the marathons after I think the 50th anniversary of New York, and I just decided that it's nice to have a goal. And the older you get, I'll be turning 64 next month. And when you have a goal, I seem more motivated to run once I have a goal in mind. If you're running a marathon, you know you have a training plan, you know it's 4 months, and each day there's something you have to do. I love that discipline. I love that focus. Secondly, I finally found a running crew in North Carolina. I was training for Tokyo last year, and I was running by myself. And honestly, when I got to 18 miles, I pulled out of Tokyo. It's like I just did not enjoy it. To me, the joy of running is training with people that really have your back and you enjoy running those miles with. So I decided to do Berlin this year. And it's an interesting story about New York. One of my new recruits at the office, this young Black woman, her bucket list was to run a New York City marathon. So I said, okay, she got into marathon and then she turned to me and said, will you run it with me? I'm like, oh no. But since Berlin is September 29th, New York, I think, is November 3rd,
Yep.
I said, okay, so I'll be returning to the streets of New York in November to run it with her. So you'll see me and Eliza running New York City. So the main thing is, the older you get, I want to stay healthy.
Yeah.
And running, it's not just about running. You want to make sure you put the alcohol aside. You want to make sure you eat properly. It's just about mental health. It's about physical health, but also finding a running group. To me, it just makes training a lot more fun. So
Yeah.
that's the reason why I decided, okay, I got two majors under my belt. If I can get Berlin, I'm halfway there. And, I want to get this done before I'm 70 so I could focus on half marathons,
Yeah.
which are a
Exactly.
lot easier to train for.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I wish you the best with that. We'll definitely be out there cheering you on. We're usually around the Whole Foods section, right past Barclays Center every year, cheering people on. So I'll be there cheering you on and Eliza as well. And yeah, the Avid Six thing is a real thing. I mean, I have my 4 stars trying to do Tokyo. Hopefully, we'll apply like you for next year. And then of course Boston, which is all just Boston is Boston. So but yeah, it's definitely something that keeps everyone moving. And I agree with you. Training with someone makes the whole thing just different. And I think that's why I love being in New York City with so many run clubs. We've been doing a whole run club series actually for the last couple of weeks, and we'll continue for the rest of this year highlighting various run clubs in New York. And we've had a number of run clubs already on the show, like Forest Parks and Teamwork and Best Life Flyers and others who just showcase what they're doing in the community. And I love the different stories. I love the different cultures. Even my group, Spartan Sunday Running Club, every club is different, and every club gives a different space for those communities. So New York City is special, as you already know, because you've been such an integral part of making it special for us. But I'm excited for what you're doing, and I know you now have been in Raleigh, North Carolina, working with McAdams. So can you just share with the listeners what you're doing down there in terms of land planning and design?
Right, right.
Yeah.
So I do three things. My practice is international. I was in private practice years ago before I went back to the public sector. And so my role specifically is to offer advisory services. I'll share a couple of projects that I focus primarily on underserved, marginalized, disadvantaged communities. In those cases, I'll give you one example. In Asheville, North Carolina, there was a place called Pack Square that had a monument of a racist governor called Governor Vance right after Black Lives Matter movement. The residents asked that monument be taken down, and the county and the city took it down. They then put out a request for proposals for a firm to come in and reimagine that space as a space for healing and a space for unity. And so we were the consultants. I was the lead person that did that project. The monument came down, and we now have a plan to reimagine that space to really make sure all people feel welcome. Because a lot of the Black residents, the Ashevilleans, did not feel comfortable in that space because of the history of that monument. And during Jim Crow, under the monument, they had separate bathrooms for whites and blacks or coloreds. So it was a powerful project where we had to do a lot of listening, a lot of uncomfortable and painful conversations. And in the end of the day, we came up with a vision of how to transform that into a place that welcomes everyone. Other projects, I'm working right now in Denton, Texas. This was a place that 100 years ago, there was a community called Quakertown.
Mm,
And during the Ku Klux Klan and others wiped the place out, moved all the blacks out, and created a park. Yet 100 years later, there are still memories and harm that people felt about what had happened in that part of Texas. And so I'm one of the consultants coming in to figure out how do we move forward to help address that past harm and come up with a plan that really restorative justice reconciles with the past. Other projects, I do a lot of advisory work of parks departments and planning departments. I come and I help train them. People are very moved by the work I did in New York City. Don't know if most people know, but completed over 850 capital projects in almost 8 years, focused on equity and inclusion to make sure that those communities that did not see a quality park got their park transformed. So doing a lot of that work, not just here, but also overseas. I'll be in Australia later this year, talking to both planners and park planners about how they can, reposition their parks. And so for me, it's just a privilege as a consultant. And then I do a lot of public speaking as a keynote speaker on average between 40 and 50, either keynotes or panelists, events that I do every year. So I'm probably on the road, either consulting or speaking almost every week, just sharing the message of inspiring people about the importance of having quality public spaces for all people. And
hmm
so it's been busy. So, and I teach. I teach at Harvard. We just finished a semester. I'll be teaching at UNC at Chapel Hill starting in the fall. And so staying busy, teaching, making sure I educate the next generation. As I said, my advisory work, the public speaking, and then the consulting. So the plate is full. And
mm.
like I said, I'm planning on retiring next June or semi-retire, but my wife said your plan is not working out. So we'll see what happens next year.
Yes, sir. Mitchell, I love the fact that you cross so many boxes when it comes to what you're sharing in the classroom, with organizations and companies, with the city of Raleigh, even when you were here in New York. And one of the things that I really appreciate about you is your ability to give space to those who are looking to have space and use those spaces for various things, whether it's people who are trying to run. And I know you're a Parks Without Borders initiative that you had here, which was very successful, right? You're opening parks, so many parks across New York City, has just been part of the reason why there's been this crazy running boom in the last couple of years, not just in New York, but across the world, where people are just going out there and using these spaces to be more active. And, I'm curious for you when it comes to what you're doing now, at McAdams and the teaching and everything else. What really inspires you to teach others and inspire others to use their spaces and use these spaces for inclusion, to tell stories, right? To rewrite history, to make things better for others who are coming behind us. What inspires you to do all these things? Because yes, I think a lot of us get into jobs and professions that serve us and help others, but
Right.
yours in particular is really opening up the door for so many for the future. You're literally creating spaces where spaces were not. And I'm
Yeah.
just curious, what inspired you to get into this? What inspired you to keep pushing forward? And what are some of the takeaways, I guess, that you've learned in terms of some of the challenges that come where you're trying to make a space where there has not been a space?
Well, I'll do a very quick Reader's Digest version. I was recently given an award in Philadelphia, and they asked me to share my life story. So I'm going to do it in about 30 seconds, which most people don't know. I had a hard upbringing in Brooklyn. My mother died when I was 12 years old of cancer and was a very painful adolescent and ended up dropping out of high school. Make a long story short, I took the very hard road of getting my general equivalency diploma, getting into college, which was not easy. I went to Pratt Institute, and it was not easy. And so there were guardian angels along the way that allowed me a second chance.
Mm,
Because I'll be honest with you, Pratt Institute said, "You are not college material," and laughed me out of the interview. But there was a gentleman right there in Ryerson Walk that said, "Hey, saw me being depressed, called me over, had a conversation, said we got two scholarships, I got them. So
Mm,
for me, I believe in second chances. I believe that there's a reason I'm here. And so throughout my life, I've lived a purpose-driven life that I've been given a gift, and I don't want to just keep it under a blanket. I want to share it with others. And God has given me the ability to communicate and share. And I see things that maybe some people don't see or communicate in a way that I hope will resonate. And so I've become driven my entire life that I want to be able to give for people to be seen and heard, as you said, and be given space and those voices, which I kind of call assassins of joy, that are very committed to rob us for whatever reason of what is important to make us live quality lives. So that's kind of the drive, and it hasn't gone away. And when I was in New York City and recognized that there are parks that have been neglected for 2 decades, when I see that there are rules that tell people you can't enter this space or you're not welcome here, I'm going to break them down. And the fact that as commissioner, I had the power and authority to do it, I leaned right into it. And then to me, it's also listening, truly listening, because people, when people say I feel heard and I feel seen, to me, that's powerful because very often people say they're listening, but empathy means listening from someone else's point of view
mm,
rather than your own. You have to see their experience, their stories through their lens, through their eyes. And so for me to have the ability to reflect back and share back to the community what I believe needs to be done. Equity means fairness, diversity, the value of different perspectives, inclusive, to create a welcoming space where people have a sense of belonging and access, to remove barriers, physical, social, financial. And so to me, I just was somewhat of I don't know, a revolutionary where I was just like saying, look, this is getting done one way or the other. But the
mhm,
bottom line is I want to create better places for people. Someone gave me a second chance. I believe throughout my entire career, rather than dismissing an employee, let's sit down and talk and give that person a second chance and give them the guidance they need to be successful. So if I had to give you 3 tips, one is to be purpose driven, have a vision, have a strategic direction, have a mission, and then you go out to accomplish it, like running a marathon.
mhm,
I've always learned when tough times come, you have 2 choices. I may have said this in the last podcast that when tough times come, you have 2 choices, to be bitter or to be better. I will always choose to be better. So when tough times come, believe it or not, I get excited because I know as a person who, I guess I'm an athlete, that resistance builds muscles.
mhm,
And so when those tough times come, it builds stronger character. So when the next challenge comes, I got this.
mhm,
And so a lot of people shy away and they become bitter versus better. They shy away from challenges, which means you're not going to develop those spiritual, those emotional, those character muscles to not only get through the next issue, but to teach others.
right.
And so to me, those are two very important lessons. And so I'm determined to share that, I guess, gospel of having a purpose-driven life, grounded in principles, grounded in values, and very determined to have that vision, that mission, that strategic direction that keeps you focused for life, but keeps you focused on individual tasks you want to accomplish.
Yeah, I love it, Mitchell. I love the passion you have behind that. And as someone who is for my company, Jag Physical Therapy, I'm the director of community engagement and inclusion. So I'm the first to be in this position at this job. And it's funny. I look at the history of inclusion and diversity for other corporations, and there's always someone on the board or someone on the staff that does that. But when it comes to healthcare, especially in my profession, physical therapy, it's a new thing. And I, as the first person to be in this position, I'm finding that I'm kind of like you, and I'm not like you at all, but I'm trying to be like you in the sense that I'm trying to open up doors and pathways for others to see this profession as a reality. I actually went to Arthur Ashe Institute with Downstate Medical Center in Brooklyn, and I spoke on a panel just talking about the pathway to being a physical therapist and what we do, and how I've struggled so many years with classes and the tests I take. And I think it's very, very daunting sometimes when people are trying to get into a situation. All they see are the challenges, or all they see is just the result at the end, not knowing the challenges you have to get there to really get that thing done. So I've been using my platform just to kind of share the story. The same way you shared your story about resilience and share my story of all the failures I had to get through. Although you may see the great things that are happening now, so much really had to happen to get there.
Right.
And I think the underlying theme that I've seen is that so many people just need to hear and see that they can do it, or hear and see that they can actually be where someone else is. But it takes that initiation. It takes that space to be provided, whether it's space in the classroom or space you're creating in society or in community, for that conversation to happen, for that connection to happen.
Right.
And it seems like you're doing that across the board. Now, my question for you, sir, is, coming from New York City, now going to Raleigh, North Carolina, it's very different in terms of the demographic of people. I'm guessing that you may have seen here in New York versus what you are seeing down there. Do you find any challenges? Was it easier, or has it been easier or more challenging for you to 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 find these spaces, or to create the space that you're having down there? Or do you feel like it's seamless wherever you go, because you travel around the world? So I'm just curious your perspective
Yeah.
on the demographics.
It is somewhat seamless, and I want to circle back on what you were saying about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Uh, New York City, I think in terms of the diversity, it's a majority minority. I don't want to use the word minority. It is a majority city of people of color, where that is not the case in Raleigh, but it's the case in many towns in Carolina. I think what is different is the conversation around diversity, equity, inclusion. And thank you for saying the words. I want all your listeners to say one thing. Stop using DEI. Stop acronyming those words. Each words have dignity and deserve respect and have meaning from 30, 40 years ago. It's not this new thing that just emerged. The minute we acronym something into EDI or DEI, it now becomes an ideology. And
Mm,
as a result, you have 20 states that are now trying to outlaw diversity, equity, inclusion in colleges and local government because they see it as an ideology and
mm,
not as something that is very powerful. I don't believe in having a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. That needs to be the CEO.
mm,
Don't delegate that responsibility. It needs to be the entire board.
mm,
Diversity, equity, inclusion is not something you do. It is who you are, and you can't fake it. You have to be committed. Diversity, the value of different perspectives: white, Black, Latino, Asian American, age, gender, sexual orientation. You need those lived experiences and voices at the table. It is not a black-white thing. It
mm,
is not an ideology. It's the value of different perspectives. Equity is about fairness. Now, there's a person running for president that talks about, I want a fair trial. He is asking for equity in the judicial system. So equity is about fair. One community is getting resources, the other one is not. And
mhm,
so I prefer people use the word fair instead of equity, because I could explain equity to someone whether they're 5 or 95. I don't know how to explain, I'm sorry, fair, whether they're not 5 or 95, but I struggle explaining what equity means to someone.
mhm, mhm,
And so to me, we need to give each one of those words its dignity and respect. It's who you are. It's not a check the box, something you do. And post Black Lives Matter, a lot of corporations got on the DEI bandwagon,
mhm,
and now it's falling off to the point where they're removing it. In North Carolina, right now, they're going to remove diversity, equity, and inclusion in higher education, get rid of it. So I just have to understand where we are,
right.
and it is different in the South, where you now see a lot more of these efforts, but that's because we made it an ideology versus what is value principles that we live our everyday lives. And so in the South, whether in New York, I still speak the same way I'm speaking.
Mhm,
I'm somewhat financially independent, so I ain't worried about losing my job, but
mhm,
I work for a company that fully supports my beliefs and what I share, and allow me to put it right there on the website as one of the principals or senior leaders, executives of the company. So just wanted to put that out there. There are some differences, but for the most part, these values transcend race, these values transcend generations, and these values transcend geography.
yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do feel like sometimes in some corporations, it does always seem like the person of color is going to be the director of community engagement, inclusion, or diversity. It's that person that you look for, but it should be from the top down. It should be the entire board. It should be the CEO. It should be everyone looking to make sure that our company is inclusive and open to sharing and opening doors for everyone else. And I think sometimes that falls on one person or two people in an organization. It really should be the effort of the entire organization to make that thing possible. And, as I spoke to these young people the other day, and they were in a health science program. So they all were somewhat motivated more than, other kids their same age. But it was just great just talking to them and seeing how interested they were just to know my experience. And, when you're 18 years old, it's kind of hard to see what you may be doing, 10 years from now or 20 years in the future. But to see someone who's actually doing that thing and ask them questions about it, that's always enlightening. We talked about mentorship and all these other things. And, I think about what you're doing, Mitchell, and it's really inspiring because you're going around the world, literally just opening up doors for so many people. And the most recent thing that I saw on your page, and I guess we can talk about that now, is this city council run. Now, listen, when I saw the post, I did get excited because I was like, wait a minute, is he coming back to New York to run for city council? Because if that's the case, let me vote tomorrow. But I realized quickly that you were doing this in Raleigh, and I had to say, I'm happy for you. I'm sad you're not up here with us, but I wanted to know what sparked this decision to make this big step and this big leap into city council.
Well, first, let me, you're not alone. A lot of people in New York were like, yo, this is amazing. Wait, Raleigh? So I said, look, in Raleigh, North Carolina, the council form of government is very different.
Hmm.
Council members and the mayor, they're part-time positions. We have what's called a strong city manager form of government. The city manager runs day-to-day operations. The city council just votes on legislation and passes the budget. That's basically it. So it's a part-time job. Since I came back, as you said in the bio, I was head of planning and development for the city for about 10 years and basically helped put the city, at least in the 21st century, on the map with coming up with very visionary plans. And so I always knew I was going to retire in North Carolina. So when I came back, everyone's saying, you got to run, you got to run. I said, no, I have to have a purpose. I am not going to run unless I have a purpose. And so about earlier this year, I started thinking, you know something, I heard they're about to embark on the next long-range plan to guide the city. Right now, the council is 4-4. You need 5 votes to pass anything. And there's a lot of votes that are deadlocked at 4-4. And I said, you know something, this is the city I'm going to retire. I miss public service. The company was absolutely on board. It's a part-time position, so I can keep doing my day job as long as I want to. And I decide, you know something, we need to break the deadlock. We want to have quality growth. I want to have housing choices for all. Uh, Coming up with an anti-displacement plan, something I'm doing in Denton, Texas, to figure out exactly how we can protect those that are vulnerable. And then a focus on public health and safety, looking at the youth. And so I decided that let me put my hat in the ring and see what would happen. I want to be at the table to have this conversation to move the debate that we're having on the council table in a positive direction. And then, if all possible, I want to elevate the level of civil discourse. It bothers me, the divisive politics and how people are talking. And we have to figure out, we can agree to disagree. We don't have to make it personal. And so at least if I can in Raleigh, is to change the way we talk to one another,
Mm.
that we are all in this city together to make a great city and stop the name calling, stop the conspiracies. And so my feeling is I'm going to call that stuff out to make sure that we're a city that everyone gets to prosper, everyone has a voice. But at the end of the day, if I don't agree with you, don't call me out.
Right.
Don't start having some side website. That's not the appropriate way. And that's why a lot of people who are committed and talented to get into government decide not to because they have to deal with all the sideshow and the circus that goes along with serving the public. You put yourself out there. So I decided, let me just put my hat in the ring. My wife finally gave me the green light. We got married. She told me you could never run for public office. And then we got to Raleigh. She said, You have my blessing. And I was like, okay, that was the last check I needed. And
Wow.
so it's a 2-year term.
Okay.
So if I like it, I'll see. If not, I'm only giving up 2 years. So that's kind of how that all evolved.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, thank God for the wife's blessing. You always need that. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what you do, it's not going to go well. So well done. And again, I think that you now, again, being in that space, right? That's the space that you are, I'm not saying the word imposing, but you're introducing yourself to a new demographic of people to continue to do what you've been doing your entire career, but now on another level. And I'm really impressed by that because it opens up again your gift really to go out there and use that same gift to be heard by others who might not have heard otherwise. And I'm just really impressed by that. And I think others can also share the sentiment that I have in the sense that that is something that we all should be doing to use our gifts to be at the table in various places. I mean, my job, I have my position in this position as the first to be in my position as director of inclusion. My job is a first for me, but I know that I'm also using my platform to engage others and to show other people what we can do in healthcare, especially because when it comes to healthcare, the numbers don't equal up. When I look at all of the Black and brown people who are applying to healthcare fields, we're still not competitive with others
Yeah.
across the world. So I love sharing the story about, yes, you can be the doctors, you can be the OTs and the PTs, and you can go out there and be part of this workforce that we have. It is not impossible. It's not this thing that is so overwhelming. You can do that. And
Yeah.
you're doing the same thing in terms of sharing your story and opening so many things. I have a question for you though, sir. I just got back from the London Marathon a couple weeks ago, and my wife and I were talking about how beautiful London is and the beauty of the city. And London has its own issues in terms of its history, but we're really impressed with the architecture and the layout of the city. But one of the things that we talked about was everywhere you go is cashless. When you're
Hmm.
talking about metro system, the bus system, even all of the food places there, it's a very cashless, or they're going in a very cashless direction when it comes to how they want to operate there. And the first thing we thought about was poor people and people who don't have access to bank accounts, or people who don't have access to cards because they may have cash, don't have access to getting a bank card. And how this system now that we have, this cashless system that's kind of going around the world, is limiting those who might not be able to go to certain stores, even be able to use certain trains and cars and buses because they might have access to a credit card or a debit card to be able to do that. So I wanted to ask you, as someone who is an urban planner, as someone who has a visionary to plan out many, many different cities and how
Right.
they operate, what are your thoughts on so many cities that are changing their perspectives and going to this cashless system and changing their environments and doing things where even in New York City, right? We have this toll thing now where you have to be able to pay a certain money if you want to be able to go a certain place in certain places in New
Right.
York City, past certain streets. So it does limit congestion, it does limit cars coming in, but it also limits those who might not be able to afford to be in these places to be there. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this because it's something that's
Well,
that's on the tap right now.
you backed right into it, but you just mentioned unfairness. Unfairness. We were talking about this, equity, that this is hitting it squarely on the head. And so there needs to be advocates. There needs to be elected officials in the UK, their MPs, members of parliament, that have to raise their voices to talk about the inequity, the unfairness of this system. One is that they're being left out of the economy because poor people spend money
Mm-hmm.
and they spend lots of money. And so someone has to talk about the implications. This issue came up in New York City. This is
Mm.
not foreign to London. When I was commissioner, this issue came up where they were complaining about all these places moving toward a cashless system. So this is not unique to London. It's happening all over the world. If you go to Europe, more and more places, you go to a restaurant, they just bring you a terminal to your,
Mm-hmm.
some places in the US do it, but it's almost everywhere when you go to Europe. So it is not equitable. I know New York City debated it for congestion pricing. And so someone has to be that voice to talk about the unfairness, and that's the importance of being both an advocate, an activist, and an elected office, is that you start bringing up these things to say, this is not fair.
Yeah.
We truly are down with this word equity. Stop using it as a catchphrase. And this is where the rubber hits the road. We've now created a system that is not equitable. And if we truly have this as one of our values, which on every website we have, it's time to walk the walk and stop talking the talk and figure it out.
Yeah.
Can it be figured out through technology? I don't know, but it has to be on the table. I do know they walked through it with congestion pricing, and I was gone after they kind of settled how they were going to move forward with it. But you're bringing up a point, what we talked about earlier. This is unfairness front and center, and it has to be at the table to ensure that if you're really going to say you're equitable, then this is where the rubber hits the road, and show us how you're going to deliver.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to. I knew you'd have something to say about that, and it's funny because at first you think it's going to be something that's so convenient. Oh, this is great. This is so convenient for me. I love this. I can just use my card everywhere. But if you're not in that demographic to have that access, then yes, it becomes a barrier. And yeah, I know that we were doing it here. We're seeing it happen in London because I just realized that although we didn't see a lot of people who were we didn't see as many homeless people that we usually see in New York and London. I know they're around, but they weren't as visible probably.
Right. But the
Um,
unhoused are hip to it too. Now, I'll be honest with you. I was in some places where an unhoused person come up to me. I'm like, I have no cash. They go, we got cash out. I'm like, wait a second. Now, wait, what? We got cash out? We got cash out? I'm like,
yeah,
okay. So, new generation.
yeah, they're
I'm
figuring it
dead
out.
serious. They're like, I got cash out. If
Yeah,
you
they're
cannot
figuring
give
it
me
out.
cash, I got cash out.
Let's make this happen. Mitchell, any final tips you want to share with the listeners about um your plan for city council or some of the plans you have coming up for the rest of this year? I know we talked about your running exploits already. We know that's going to be exciting to see you in New York. But any final tips you want to share with listeners about even ways to incorporate more inclusion, more diversity, more equity for their companies, for their businesses,
Yeah.
or even just to do a personal push for that to happen in people's lives. Any final tips you want to share?
Yeah, well, first, I'm very grateful that the council, if I win, is a part-time job because I love what I'm doing, the training, the speaking. I'll be traveling to a city in Tennessee to give the entire Parks Board an orientation and inspire them the importance of parks. So I'm glad it's part-time because I love the other full-time stuff that I'm doing. But I truly want people to understand what each one of these words mean. Let me just reiterate again, stop using the acronym of DEI and make it an ideology and give each word, because I keep hearing inclusive, equitable. Really take the time to understand what that means. Companies truly understand what that means. If you have pay disparity within your company, that falls on the umbrella of equity, where male men are being paid higher than women, people coming in are getting a higher salary, people, depending on the college they come from. You'll give a bump if you come from Columbia, but what about the lived experience if you went to a city college? But your credentials of going through tough living in New York may far outweigh someone with a degree from Columbia. So what I'm saying is start to break down what these words really mean and stop making them too far to reach. And I'm gonna repeat it again, diversity, the value of different perspectives. It's not like, oh, we need a black face, we need a Latino face. It's not represent and reflect. It's about the value of different perspectives that individual with their lived experience brings to the table. Equity is about fairness. It's about pay. It's not just externally, it's also internally how you make your decisions, how you treat your employees. To me, that's equally important. And that inclusive is that, do you create a welcoming environment? When I
Mm-hmm.
come to an office, do I feel welcome? When we have parties, is there food that is, let's say, pleasant to multiple palates?
Mm-hmm.
Because me, I want some comfort food when I'm coming to an event. I'm like, what is this stuff? It is too fancy. I'll pass and let me go out to eat after I'm done. It's little things
Yeah.
that you take the time. Sean, if I'm inviting you to my house, I want you to feel welcome.
Yeah.
Brother, what do you eat? What do you drink? what kind of music you like. I'm going to go out of my way to make sure you feel and companies have to think the same way. You now have diverse employees. You've got to think, what is that common denominator
Mm,
or what makes people feel unwelcome? We're past the age, we're still in the age of microaggressions.
mm-hmm.
And so we have to really be serious about it and stop having it as a check the box or delegate a committee or appoint a person. You got this, because if you do that, it absolves you of the personal responsibility of being that diversity, equity, inclusion ambassador and implementer in your daily life.
Mm,
So I will leave that. If you can't do that, take it off your website.
mm.
Stop playing games or just check a corporate box because you have a equity, social, and governance ESG dashboard you're trying to make sure your shareholders can see. To me, say what you mean and mean what you say. And if
Mm.
you truly want to advance these principles, which have been around for 30, 40, 50 years, and ain't a new thing post Black Lives Matter,
Yeah.
to me, they're very important. So I'll end on that. And like I said, I'm not putting myself out there, but I'm willing to talk to any group that wants to sit down, because when I share this, I actually show examples of not what it means, but how it could be done in real practice using New York City and other projects I worked on as case studies.
Yeah. Mitchell, I might take you up on that. I mean, your intuition and your tutelage is noteworthy, and I think it should be shared with so many more. So, for those who are listening and are looking to enhance their ability to really reach out there and do this thing right, you can always reach out to him directly. Mitchell, how can they contact you, or how should they be able to find you?
Well, I'm on social media, but I want to grab one thing. Oh, I see it. It's right here, one thing. So the other thing you said, what I'll be doing in the future is I do plan on eventually writing my own book. I wrote the afterword for this book. It's called Empathic Design. It's really how to create inclusive spaces using empathy as a lens. And so
Mm,
I wrote the afterword, examples of work in New York City. But if people want to reach me, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. I'll share my email, which is silver at McAdams, McAdamsco.com. Again, that's McAdams, McAdamsco.com, silver. And you'll be able to reach me. But again, if you want to DM me, I'm going to regret saying that because I try to keep up with all these DMs. Also on LinkedIn. So that's if folks want to reach me.
awesome, awesome. And when are you going to be back in New York again?
I'll be back for my birthday, June 27th. We got a Roadrunners board meeting. Oh, and if people want to follow me on the campaign, it's both Twitter and Instagram, Silver number 4 Raleigh. It's just getting loaded up, so it's not a lot there. Here, our campaign is September, October, but I'll be back for my birthday, June 27th. I'll be there for that weekend, and then I'm back for a family reunion, which so that's in mid-July, and then after that, I'll probably be back definitely for the marathon. So that's a must.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I hope to see you whenever you do come back for the marathon. I'll try to catch you for one of those last 10 runs or something like that. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. But I
All right.
appreciate you, sir. You already know you've been an inspiration to me and to many in the running community, in the New York City community, and now in the Raleigh community, just being a trailblazer. So keep up the great work. We appreciate you. We salute you and we support your campaign. And we pray for all the blessings for you on that journey. And just thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean. Always a blessing to talk with you.
Yes, sir. And folks, you heard what the man said. I mean, I love having Mitchell on the show. He just gives so many insightful tips just about life and really the passion he has for opening spaces for others, not just for himself, but for others. And the quote for today bows that same thing, right? One can choose to go back towards safety or forward towards growth. Growth must be chosen again and again. Fear must be overcome again and again. This is what he's doing. He's going out there and he's pushing the envelope, growing and growing into new spaces, into new territory, and showing his light, sharing his vision, being in his bag, really, what I say, but doing it in such a great and empathic way that others are going to be changed. And Raleigh's lucky to have him. And we're lucky to have him in New York as well. So Folks, follow the page. I'll put the link for his campaign page in the show notes. So follow him. If you're in the Raleigh community, vote for him as well. And if you're in NYC, continue to follow his journey as we all try to go towards our 6-star journey for Avid 6 and continue to just keep pushing forward to be healthy and to be better for ourselves and for others. Folks, thank you again for joining the show. Continue to be more in this year, 2024. We'll see you next week. Peace.